So, I want to talk about a project I've been working on in my spare time. I've spent probably 4 hours a session, and I spend 1 to 3 sessions a week on this, maybe if I manage to get the time. And it's just a little side project that I'm hoping to release next month. And it's a simple concept. It's rock, paper, scissors, and it's going to be an iMessage extension. So you just submit your move to any given iMessage thread, and then whoever's in that thread can tap on the bubble that you've sent and participate. So it's quite a simple idea, but it's using CloudKit as a back end. So you have the struggles of, dealing with offline state, dealing with merging policies, stuff like that. So it's not straightforward as it might seem on the surface, but it's been fun and enjoyable. And today I just want to talk about briefly the kind of dependency injection that I'm using. So I'm using the point-free library, which I swear by, at least for my personal projects anyway. I can appreciate in commercial projects it's a bit more controversial to bring in a third party at random, but I'd like to think point-free are quite well known in the industry, at least, or at least that's what I tell myself. And I really like the library. I've been using it for a long time, and I encourage anybody to get involved. So just looking at this particular workflow, I've got this this is a round. Rock, paper, scissors traditionally is between two players, but I'm going to have it between 2 plus. So whoever's in the thread, in your iMessage thread at that time. So in theory, it's n number of players, right? A player is meant to then, register their interest in playing in the game, and then they submit a move. And through the process of elimination, which is quite a big deal out in Asia. When I was out there, I noticed, excuse me, I noticed a lot of people playing this game in groups, and they play it outside, outside a restaurant or whatever, and they would all stand in a circle and play the game. So it's quite a big deal in Asia, at least. But in the UK, you would traditionally think of this as just being between two players. So I'm trying to open it up to n number of players, and it's down in this sort of this view here. You can see it's square shape or rectangular, and you can pull it up to be full screen, which is the iMessage experience. And what you see here is just a single round. You start at this point because it's pretty much assumed you're going to be logged in. I'm using CloudKit, which demands that you're logged in with iCloud. And if you're using iMessage, then you're probably logged in. And I can't really imagine a scenario where you're not. Like, I'm trying to anticipate that you are, just to cover that edge case. Like, I don't know, maybe you're in the middle of a game and you sign out or something. I'll have to test it, but I wanted to put that in place anyway. I thought it would be a good fallback. So you can see here, start here is like choose your move, right? But if for whatever reason there's an error, you can fall back to this root experience which says start, at which point then you tap the button and I'll verify that you're actually logged in with iCloud, So it's a decent fallback, but I doubt you'll ever get to that point. So you start here with choose your move, you then go to a loading experience, and then there's error handling, which is the topic of the day, really, how to manage it. And what I wanted was a very modern approach. We're using SPM, so I've got these packages here, and what you're looking at now is just the RPS game service package, but the main target is in another workspace, and it pulls this in, and it's just a simple view controller. In fact, I'm not sure about the brand new Xcode, but in the latest sort of established Xcode released to date, if you were to make an iMessage extension, it would be UIKit and storyboards, believe it or not. So it's quite surprising to see. But you start off with a single controller. You're not meant to put elaborate navigation in there. So it's just, a very sort of simple experience. And I've gone straight into SwiftUI. So it's like as soon as you give me a message of some kind, I'm going to go straight into SwiftUI. And I've got this package, which is split into parts. So it's just a single package, but you can see that it has 4 distinct targets, which are listed here. And it's got, the brains, the model at this level. It's got a shade library, which all three of these can see, and it just contains stuff that's quite simple. But the styling stuff is isolated and the UI is isolated. So it's quite handy to have it all in one package like this. And I just want to walk through this workflow. I want to talk about, how simple the navigation is these days. And I want to talk about how you can use dependency injection, the Swift UI, the Swift Dependencies library, the point we got, to your advantage. And it's really quite a nice experience. So there's distinct steps you have to authenticate, right? So you have to have a step for that. And then you have to have this create game step. And the approach that the Point Free team endorse is to build clients, and these clients are distinct nodes in your project. You go to that node and you will create the game, or you will register a candidate, or something simple like that. And then under the hood, it does all the magic, right? And it's quite nice because you have these opportunities then in your code to say, well, I want to intercept at exactly that point and change it up, right? So I'm using this mechanism. I might show you this mechanism quickly, actually. It's where I'm essentially saying that for any given client, there's this report and it's a closure, and that closure will be a main actor. So when you're in this experience, if I were to look this up now and say create game, and this is an approach I'm using in my personal projects. I would probably discuss this with any team that I'm working on, but the approach I've decided on is that for any given client that I produce in this way, for this style, I have the testing logic isolated here, and I've denoted that with an _L, and then I've got the live implementation here with an _T and an _L to separate the live version and the test version. And the reason for that is because initially I had a lot of modules, and it gives me the flexibility to say up front that, you know what, I'm going to build this in model A, but the live implementation might be in model B. So if I want to run this module in isolation, I may not have the live value, but at least I can run the previews, at least I can run the unit tests, And it means that I've got that flexibility then to keep everything, what's it called, dependency inversion, where I'm saying I can run the module in isolation, and then I've inverted that dependency need into whoever consumes me as a module. So it seemed like the best way to split it apart, and it's working well for me, I think. So, you look at this use case here that I've got wrapped up, and you can see that if you come into this use case, I'm going to register the candidate using this client, and there's distinct steps, right? So to create a game, you need to first register as a participant, then you create the game, and then you declare that you're finished with this process. And I'm using a transaction here. This is the command pattern, which I won't get into, but you can see that there's these distinct steps, and it's an async function which has an actor in play, and because I'm awaiting at these distinct points, it's a unique opportunity then to report back to the UI and say, this is our progress, this is how far we've moved along. And I think it's quite nice, it's quite clear, it's quite concise, and I've enjoyed that approach so far. So coming back to this view, you can see, you might notice first of all that I've got this register font approach. That's kind of a decision I've made in my own projects. This is something I would again discuss with the team if I was working on a team. But if you want to build an isolated package that has user interface like this, and it has a custom font and custom styling, custom colors, I want this package to be independent. But one of the legacy issues with fonts in particular is that you have to go down into the iOS app target, go into the info.plist and declare your font there, and load your fonts in a specific way. And I know that's getting easier and better and less cumbersome as time goes by, but there's still a step involved. And the approach I've read online, and I've actually read the article, I've followed along, and I've used it in production. It's a great approach, which is to create this dedicated package that uses a macro that then loads your font in situ, and then you can consume that package and you're good to go in any package that consumes it. The limitation I've noticed with that is that it requires a bit more upfront work, which is fine. You do it once and then you forget about it, okay. But in addition to that, you have to enable plugins, which might be something you end up doing inevitably anyway, because plugins are good, right? But I'm not using plugins. I've not needed one. I don't foresee the need for one anytime soon. It is additional headache in your CI pipelines, because you have to then say, enable any plugin in my CI pipeline. Otherwise, you get that pop-up right in the UI that says, enable plugin before running or whatever. And that sort of upsets then any UI testing you've got. So it screws up CI, it screws up automation. It opens sort of a security door as well, because you're then enabling plugins in your CI pipeline. It just seemed like a lot of commitment to an approach that I don't necessarily care about. I've got an approach here which is just to register the fonts, and the consequence of this approach is that I end up with a duplicate font file in the binary that I ship to the App Store. And I don't mind that. Worst case scenario, if that really grinded my gears, I'd have a script of some kind that would say, once the binary's built, strip that out. But I really don't mind if the font is in there in duplicate. It seems like that's sort of my decision. If I spoke about that in a team, we'd probably discuss against that. And in a commercial project, I might sort of agree with the sort of more painful approach. But anyway, I've got this to register a font, and I'm putting it in here because it just works, and it's controversial. But the prepare dependencies callback here is what the point-free team provide, and they say here is an opportunity to declare what your dependencies will do. But I've taken this opportunity just to say register fonts quickly, and that works in all of the previews, and I'm quite happy with it. So anyway, coming back to these clients, the current user is probably the star of the show, and I'm saying, there's some sort of sleep that happens, and then there's an error, right? And then followed by that is the game creation client, where I say register participant, and then sleep simulates that. It actually calls, in the live version, it actually calls the authenticating client at that point. But I don't have that nesting in the preview, so that's fine. I don't mind that. It's just a sleep anyway. And then create a game. I pass it some rubbish that I've got down here, and sleep again, and I throw an error, right? So that means then I can see that whole workflow, which is, by the way, the create game workflow, all in one place. So I make a selection, it goes through the motions, and it gives me that distinct error. I get to see what it says, I get to see how it behaves, and if I interact with it, I wait for the dismiss completing. Then I go back to this experience that I told you about, where you're probably never going to see this, but if you enter sort of an irrecoverable error state, it seems like a good fallback, because at least then I can say, can I even log in, right? Is there something wrong with logging in? Because there's not much I can do beyond that. I've done as much recovery as I can under the hood. If you get an irrecoverable situation, at least I can bring you back to here. What's the word? What's the phrase? Turn it off, turn it back on again. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to log out, and then I'm going to try and log in again, and hopefully something will resolve itself, and that's the best that I can do. But I can change this experience up. I can say, well, you know what? Instead of throwing, I'm going to say everything's fine, right? So now if I simulate this, you'll see that you've got game ready. And I've not developed the next phase. Like I've got a round designed, but I've not simulated what's next. So that's what I'm hoping to get by the end of this month, is the next step in this workflow. But it's nice to see it here, it's nice to play around with it. And if you were to come back to this experience, I could say, well, instead of throwing an error, this time you're going to say that authentication was successful, right? So the submitting move failed, then you press start, you successfully log in, and you go around again, and you fail, you go back to the start, you press start, you log in, right? So at least I get to see this complete workflow, I can interact with it, and it is the true power of the Swift UI previews that you have to admire. Is pretty damn good when it works well. It's such a temperamental environment. It can fall apart so quickly if you don't keep a sort of a regimented approach to how you scale it up. So I would highly recommend the point-free library and the client-based approach. It's truly wonderful, to be honest. And yeah, if there's anything else I can think of in this domain, I'll make another video to follow up. But I hope you like it, and if you can give me any feedback, I'd appreciate it. Thanks a lot.